And I have one final question for you, and that is, for my students who might be considering starting their own business, what advice do you have for them?
It's good you're asking me now. So, because probably, yeah, I've got a lot of experience. I have to say my advice would have been different in the past to what it is now, and I'll tell you why. Historically, I've had this view that if someone wants to start a company, they should gain some experience in some other companies, then say, okay, well, now I've seen how those companies do it, and then try to do it themselves. And you can see sort of my kind of career was kind of a bit like that. In actual fact, when I was in a corporate world, I systematically went through different functions. And that's, by the way, that another reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is I started as accounting. I was in a large corporate, so in accounting, then went into sales, which is totally the opposite, went into product development and product management, and then went into sort of internal re-engineering and so on. Because I had that view to say, well, if someone's got all those sort of functional experiences, then when they start the company, they have this experience, which helps me, to be fair, right? I remember one of the, actually, you said advice, you've got me going now. I remember in Australia, when I was at school, I did my work experience. Our school had a list of companies you could go to for work experience. I was still entrepreneurial at that level. I thought, no, I'm going to find my own work experience. So I started writing I thought I want to go to the stock exchange, the Sydney Stock Exchange. So I wrote to all the stockbrokers, and two of them, bless them, took me. And one of them, and I actually worked on both the futures exchange at the time when it was the outcry and so on, and the stock exchange, Sydney Stock Exchange, on the floor. And anyway, when I was leaving, I asked one of the senior people, they said, can you give me some advice, and I'll tell you the advice she gave me, bless her. She said, I said to her at that time, I was going to do accounting, and which is what I did. I did economics at Deakin University, majoring in accounting, and I worked in accounting for a short while, but I didn't continue. I couldn't find a tick mark of auditing. Very exciting. But she said to me, she said, look, you want to know enough about accounting to know if an accountant's sort of not telling you the full story, right? And I took that to sort of a next level. So I think that was one advice I took, and I did systems. So I became, and it did help me when I was in a technology company. We had engineers, and then it was my job. I was the interface between the customers and the engineering group, right? Sometimes the engineers will get caught up in their software design. No, you can't do this. And I said, no, there's a problem here we need to fix. The client needs it, the customer needs it, right? So I used that so I could understand. I knew enough about engineering to know if these guys were sort of, not really, right? So that was one approach, but my views changed a bit. So, that kind of corporate experience applied to startups. And one of the biggest points of advice I would give people is I learned later in my career, this concept of lean startup. I don't know if you've heard much about it.
Oh, yeah.
It is based on the book by Eric Ries, right? And to me, as someone who's come from a lean kind of background, because lean came from manufacturing, right? So I was trained in, and they have different belts. So I was a master black belt in Lean Six Sigma, right? So I was absolutely fascinated by the fact that some group, and it's an actual movement, has figured out a way of applying those kind of approaches to the whole process of de-risking a startup. And to me, that's phenomenal. And I love it, and we follow it in QCP. And I just give you one example, which I highly recommend your students use if they were going to start up their company, is they talk about the assumption-based approach in lean startup. Right. And I think we use that, which says, know your assumptions about the problem. In our case, it is, the problem of these small companies having access to equity. Know about your assumptions about the solution. So we've got, I won't go through them, but we've got a couple of mechanisms that we're using to fix that problem. And then your assumptions around the implementation, right? And if you think about it, just iterating, the word that everyone uses now, and even pivoting, if some of them are so incorrect, right? If one follows that, and not everyone can, sometimes the mindset's a bit different, right? I'm a bit systematic, and sometimes my family was too systematic, when we try to do things in the house also, right? But I think as an approach, it is very powerful
Mm.
because it creates structure in a very uncertain environment. And you know, it's interesting, you've been at university, it takes a approach of hypothesis testing, right? So you have a
Mhm.
hypothesis, you go out there, you test it, and you come back, you keep on iterating that way, very structured. And finally, I would say, you know, whatever you're doing, you know, you have to have belief. I think belief is very important. Belief in yourself, in the cause, and wherever you can source that belief. For me, it's my own faith. I'm a Christian, and but for whoever it is, you know, they should have some mechanism to, because it's difficult. It's not easy, but the rewards are there.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. And my students are going to get a ton out of this
Okay,
recording.
great.
Thank you so much.